Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me in the back? That's great. Very much. Dave? Thank you. Well, it is good to be with you here at Abington School District. I know we are in the middle school, but I have to say to you, it takes me back because this used to be known as the North Campus for 9th and 10th graders when I attended Abington High School. So it's particularly nice to be back here tonight. I'm having a couple of vibes, like did I miss a paper? Is there something I forgot to do? But I'm delighted to be here with you. Thank you for taking the time. After all, this is a Monday night where you could have been doing a whole lot of other stuff. There's a little competition down the road at the Leah Corus Center with the former president and the boss. So I thank you for beating back the crowds here and coming to our town hall. It's a privilege to be here at Abington High School, or Abington School District. I know this is the middle school. I can't get over my past. And I want to acknowledge that two of my teammates, co-workers, are also Abington alum. Kathleen Joyce, where are you? Kathleen, there she is in the back. And Dave Corrigan, also graduate of Abington. You can do the math, you can figure out how old I am. It's a long time ago. In fact, the last time I was on this stage in the 1970s, I flubbed my line in a play. I hope I do a little better tonight. So, in any event, I'm delighted to be here with you. Welcome. I am Madeleine Dean from the 4th Congressional District. I have the privilege. What's the matter? Are you serious?
I can change it.
I thought I lost that yearbook. In fact, I think it was in a flood in my basement. They have it in the library. How lovely. All those awkward years. I still am fighting with this hair. What can I say? But I did enjoy these clubs. I was in World Affairs Club and Key Club. I did enjoy that work. Somebody's going to pay for this. You're killing me. I did enjoy those clubs and some of the friends that I made here that are still my friends forever to this day. So thank you. Superintendent Jeffrey Fetcher, I don't know if anybody is here, but Principal Daniel File, please, thank you. Abington School Board, thank you. The Abington Police Department, thanks for looking over our community so well. Abington Township Commissioner John Spiegelman, my official greeter. Thank you, Commissioner. I see some other electeds. Yes, Spiegelman deserves a round of applause. I see some other electeds. I see Councilwoman Barton in the audience. Good, thank you. Concha Hopkins, Councilwoman. And other electeds. Wave your hand if there are any other electeds in here. I don't want to miss anybody. Now they're probably down with the boss. What can I say? Thank you to my entire team. Would you wave your hand if you work with me? Because I do want to acknowledge the extraordinary work they do all year long, all day long. Thank you. They have a talent for people, and they even thought enough to bring tasty cakes. So nobody goes hungry here tonight. I want to thank the Key Club. I had the chance, because I should have suspected something like this. The team asked me what clubs was I a part of, and I said Key Club was one that I really loved. So I had the chance to meet with some current Key Club members at Abington High, 11th graders, Maddie and Kennedy, that came to my office today. It was so fun to meet with them and hear from them about their spirit of service. 11th grade and interested in service. They were also running for office. One had run for president. She's going to run again for president of that club. Very exciting to see young leaders like that coming right out of Abington. So tonight, a little roadmap of where we're going to go, and then we're going to get to you. First, I'll do a little brief overview of this district, my work in Congress. Then I'll discuss the major laws we passed last Congress and that are being implemented robustly now. And most importantly, what I want to do is open up the conversation for your questions, your opinions, things that matter to you. So let's begin with the district. The 4th Congressional District, as you can see here, encompasses most of Montgomery County and a huge swath of Berks County to our west. It's home to nearly 800,000 residents. And as you know, we're in my hometown tonight. In the township where I grew up, my husband PJ grew up. We both were raised in Glenside. And I was a graduate here and he a graduate of Bishop McDevitt. So it's fun to be right here where that star sits. I'm right now in my 3rd term in Congress. I serve on the House Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committee, and I am honored to do that work on those 2 substantial committees, especially at this time in world affairs and national affairs. I was also appointed to something sadly new, the bipartisan task force to investigate the attempts on the former president's life, on Donald Trump's life, the attempted assassinations. I want to tell you that this is a very bipartisan task force, with the chairman, the Republican chairman, Mike Kelly, a colleague and friend from Western Pennsylvania, from Butler, Pennsylvania, alongside our ranking member, the Democrat Jason Crow. It is a very bipartisan task force. We are determined to get at the truth, to find out the gaps for the protection of not just elected officials, but candidates. Importantly, as Chair Kelly said to me, and it exactly meets my moment, we want to restore faith in public institutions. We want people to have the confidence, for example, that the Secret Service is up to and keep safe our elected officials, their families, as well as candidates. We are determined to find the gaps, and sadly we are finding them very obviously, gaps between communication and prearrangements with the Secret Service and local law enforcement. And I hope you will agree with me that in this time, and at any time, there is no room for political violence. We must not ever succumb to that. We need our voices to be heard through our ideas, the robustness of our ideas, and at the ballot box. It's important to protect public officials and candidates, but I want you to know that I see it, as I went to Butler to visit, I see it equally important to make sure you protect the people who went there, who wanted to simply be a part of the civic engagement, to hear from candidates, just to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They had the right to be free from violence. That's what we are tasked with doing. In Congress, you know, you can also join caucuses. You get committee assignments like mine, but you can also join caucuses, things that interest you more. You can see some of mine listed here, if you can read that. But you'll notice that some of them are around mental health, around addiction and recovery. I'm a member of the Ukraine caucus. There are many caucuses that I am interested in and participate in, and what caucuses do is give us an opportunity to learn, to improve our work, and to make a greater impact alongside others of common interests. So let's look back just a moment. Oh, I skipped a piece. Something else I have the opportunity to do is Hakeem Jeffries appointed me this Congress to the Regional Leadership Council. On the Regional Leadership Council, I represent much more than that 4th Congressional District. I have all of Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky for all the big Invest in America bills that we passed last Congress. Not this Congress, but the 117th. We work directly with the White House for the implementation of these massive initiatives that I was very proud to be any small part of and to vote for. These are investing in America, they are investing in Americans. Let me just run through quickly the 6 top bills. Number 1, you remember the American Rescue Plan, $1.9 trillion. This was 1 year into the pandemic, literally 1 year since it was determined that we were in a pandemic. We were able to pass this massive bill, put shots in arms, money in people's pockets, protect small businesses, and directly fund state and local government as they were struggling through COVID. Number 2, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That was exciting to pass. $1.2 trillion to rebuild our communities, and I'll talk about that a little more in a minute. The PACT Act for our veterans' health care, to make sure we provide veterans with everything they need for the exposures that they suffered as they served our country. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first time that that Congress has done anything around the scourge of gun violence in this country, first time in 30 years. It is a start to build safer communities, and it is saving lives, and there's more that we can do there. The CHIPS and Science Act, a really future-looking bill, bringing manufacturing back to America, and it is working. And finally, the Inflation Reduction Act. It's the largest investment for our planet, for our climate ever, and it's long overdue. It is lowering prescription drug prices, especially for seniors, but for everyday Americans as well. So let me just take 3 examples from these big bills to tell you some of the work that is coming out as a result of the implementation and the use of these resources that we were proud to work on and very excited to pass for our communities. The infrastructure law. It is creating a stronger, greener, cleaner nation to meet the changing demands and to meet the future demands of our communities. Of course, we think of roads and bridges, but also public transit, internet access. Millions have gotten internet access across this country as a result of this bipartisan infrastructure bill. And very importantly, and I know you, my neighbors, think about this, clean water. There's money in here for clean water. I'm sure many of you have felt the fruits of this bill. Some of the frustrations when you're stuck in construction, I know that. I feel it too, but I think you're seeing the fruits of it. Have you driven along I-76, the Schuylkill Expressway, and seen finally the beautiful repaving, a chance to smoothly and safely drive on that road? 422 is experiencing the same kinds of improvements, and there's so much more going on, so many more things that we are doing with this investment. Think about it, it's the largest investment in this country in infrastructure since President Eisenhower's administration, 70 years. So from Berks County to Montgomery County, the infrastructure bill is investing, and it's investing in safe and clean water. At Crossley Farm, here's a picture here, Crossley Farm in Berks County, we are investing $11 million to clean up a toxic site. The EPA discovered this from 1970s. Some contaminants were placed in the soil there, buried in the soil there, that are cancer-causing chemicals. It was named in the 90s to be remitigated and to make sure that it was cleaned up, but due to a lack of funding, it stalled and stalled and stalled. With the Inflation Reduction Act, we were able to get $11 million, and they are so proud to be moving so much more quickly and smartly to clean up that site and restore it to a clean environment. That's Crossley Farm. You know, in Pennsylvania, I love the part of our Constitution that says we the people have the right to clean air, clean water, and the preservation of our natural aesthetic. Article 1, Section 27. Well, guess what? In these bills, we have an awful lot around that very right that we have for clean water. Take a look. Projects right around here. The Inflation Reduction Act put $92 million for Pennsylvania alone for PFAS water cleanup. I'm excited about that. I think you and my neighbors remember that out of what was the former Willow Grove Naval Air Base, where one of my brothers served and worked alongside others on planes, hydraulic mechanic, Harry, my brother Harry. At the Willow Grove Naval Air Base, we have contamination from PFAS. I want to also shout out my brother Bob, who I see is here, a Vietnam vet. Hello, Bob. Thanks for being here. Yes, why not? Round of applause for Bob. So clean water. We are investing in clean water. We are cleaning up that which we didn't even know we were struggling with 15 years ago. The chemical producers knew it, but we didn't know it as citizens. Just recently, want to flip to the next one? Just recently, my team and I had the chance to tour Upper Dublin Township. There are new township buildings that are well underway. You'll remember 3 years ago, Hurricane Ida whipped through, doing so much damage to Upper Dublin, to homes, to businesses, and to the municipal buildings. And you know what was neat to see? In the face of this devastation, Upper Dublin found a silver lining, a chance to rebuild. And what they did when they rebuilt, they are rebuilding their municipal building, their entire police department, their public works garage. They're doing it in a sustainable way thanks to, in large measure, the Inflation Reduction Act and grants that they were able to get. A huge grant for geothermal heating. It's really visionary. And another good-sized grant for solar panels. It's not only good and sustainable and going to save money, they're doing all of this entire rebuild, without having to raise taxes on their taxpayers. It's money saving, it's future focused, all while not increasing local tax revenues. These are just a few examples in our district. And there are 60,000 projects across this country. So I'll pivot here to say something else I like to do, which is, this is one of the best parts of my job, visiting small businesses in our district. So here we go, here I am at Sweet Magnolia in Glenside. I love Sweet Magnolia as well as its owner. Linda's stuff in Hatboro, that was fascinating. I'm not a good shopper, I didn't really understand Linda's stuff, but man oh man, is that a powerhouse of a business. DJ Pallets in Pottstown, they reimagined an old building, an old manufacturing plant that was so contaminated. They cleaned it up and they are employing people and they're making pallets. Really, really cool. GK Elite, I hope it was not lost on anybody. GK Elite in Reading, who designed the uniforms of our Team USA women gymnastics team. You know them, here they are, Simone Biles, Jordan Childs, and Suni Lee. It was so neat to visit their shop, where they design, they fabricate, and manufacture, and of course we got gold medals out of it, and they were beautiful, beautiful uniforms. And finally, Victus Sports in King of Prussia. It's a relatively young company who, as of next year, will be the official bat of Major League Baseball, right here in our community. That's a round of applause. And I want to be consistent. I want to tell you that this excites me to visit businesses, but we know an awful lot of businesses suffer during COVID, but it's good to see the revitalization and restarting and the entrepreneurship that is amazing. But I have an optimism alongside a realism. Our economy is not fully recovered. You and I both know that. Prices remain too high. I want to be clear. Our economy is working. It is improving, especially here in the 4th Congressional District. In fact, we are recovering faster than any other G7 nation. 16 million jobs have been added in just the last 4 years. More than 700,000 of those jobs are manufacturing jobs. Unemployment is at 4.1%. Inflation has cooled to 2.4%. Wages, this is important, factoring in for inflation. Wages in Pennsylvania, after adjustment for inflation, on average are up $6,000 a year. The Fed, thankfully, lowered interest rates by 0.5 percentage point, and I have a hope, and others have a hope, that there'll be more later by the end of this year. And I don't know about you, but the last time I filled up at Wawa, gas prices were right around $3 a gallon. That's a vast improvement over where we have been, but there's more to do. So while I'm an optimist, I'm still clear-eyed about our challenges. Many companies have been making record profits, as we, the consumers, suffer. They're keeping prices artificially high and their profits even higher. That's why I joined Senator Warren in a letter to the CEOs of Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and General Mills, demanding that they put a stop to what is called shrinkflation. I'll give you one example. Open a bag of potato chips. Sadly, sometimes you find more air than chips, and you're paying the same price. We have to call out companies that are doing that, knowing that prices were rising as a result of supply chain and other COVID issues, but now that those supply chain issues have settled down, they're not fully solved, corporate excess profit taking needs to be tackled, and we in Congress can do that. We also must do everything we can around more housing stock and affordable housing, whether rental or purchase. There's lots more to do. And I'll end with this, the thing that we actually like doing most of all, serving our constituents. I'm delighted to share with you the services my team offers you and the rest of our community. I thank you for coming to us and bringing your friends and neighbors to us when they have a problem that includes any federal offices. And if it isn't something we can help you with, we direct you to where we know somebody can help you with. We have seen some of these listed here: Social Security, Medicare, IRS. We are often helping veterans get their DD-214s, tax returns, passports. We can handle a whole range of cases, and we love doing it. I hope you know we have offices. Obviously, we have an office in Washington, D.C., but our Constituent Services Office is here in Glenside and in Pottstown. And Pottstown is just a fun place to be when we see the growth going on there. I like this statistic. Oh, okay, you're showing the offices. There's Pottstown, Glenside, people I get to work with. And I think I missed a slide. But what I will tell you is, in the time that I've been in office, we have had the chance to open and to close more than 12,000 constituent cases. And that isn't even counting the thousands of phone calls we take every single month, the many emails and letters, stop-ins that we get in offices. But just cases that needed to be opened and closed, more than 12,000 in the time I've been in office. And that is because of the extraordinary team that I have. So may I give a round of applause for my team. So we're here to serve you. That is what is important to me and to my entire team. Call, mail, email, stop in, visit our website, dean.house.gov. There's lots of good information on that. Representing the 4th Congressional District, representing my hometown, is an honor of a lifetime. I am so privileged and lucky to do it. I love the work that I'm doing. I feel the urgency about it to continue to grow our communities. So I thank you for the chance to take some time to be with me tonight. And now what I'd like to do, with your permission, is to turn this over to you. We will take your questions. I know at the door, we did take some postcard questions, handwritten questions. We also will have 2 of my coworkers walking around with mics. One happens to be named Mike, and the other is Walt. Mike is on the mic, and Walt. So if you would, raise your hand if you have a question. I think we're going to start with something from the box. These are 2 together. How many of these we do together? Okay, we'll hold this. That's it. Okay. Oh, I appreciate this one. Extraordinarily timely. The first question, you might guess, is about the Israel-Hamas war and the horror that was the attack on Israel a little more than a year ago now, where 1,200 citizens were brutally, barbarically murdered, 250 some hostages taken, and this was all by Hamas terror, pre-planned terror. I've been to Israel 4 times, 2 times since the October 7th attack. I visited Kibbutz Be'eri. We were shown footage, very raw footage of the attack. Images I will never forget. Children and adults burned alive. Women brutalized, raped, sexually assaulted. An attack on Israel, an attack on Jews, like we haven't seen. And so I wear this dog tag every day. It was given to me by family members of hostages. I met with them in Israel, in Washington, D.C. multiple times, here in Philadelphia region. In my heart, the most important thing is, number 1, get the hostages home. It is inconceivable to me that more than 390 days, I suppose, we still have 101 hostages, some living, some deceased. And so that has been my plea, my work on foreign affairs. I called for a ceasefire in February, a bilateral ceasefire. Everybody has to stop, and the hostages have to come home. Sadly, that has not happened. Many of us have been calling for that. It has not happened. So I want to say very, very clearly to you, I stand with Israel with its right to defend herself. I support that democracy, especially in the face of that horror. But there's another side to this story. The Palestinians, who are innocent of all of this. At last count, it looks like nearly 45,000 have died. Many, many, many children, women, old, young. That's not right either. So I have called for an end to the just brutal loss of civilian life. I've had the chance to visit with Palestinian families who have lost family members. I've had the chance, sadly here in Philadelphia, to meet with mothers and their children, Palestinian children who are here being treated at Shriners Hospital and elsewhere, children who have lost limbs. It's just a handful of them. And we know that is multiplied, magnified over and over again. And so I've called for a ceasefire, a two-state solution, a regional way of ending this conflict and ending the suffering. Israel has a right to security and dignity, and so do the Palestinian people. And the question, and my colleague asked me to read the question, which I should have done, I just jumped into it. I know you are an adamant supporter of Israel, but is it time to rethink or revise how we are supporting Israel? And the answer is yes. The other question that goes alongside it, when are you going to stop supporting Israel's excessive force in the Middle East? What I will say to you is that when I support Israel, and I have supported the supplemental security package that not only went to Israel, but of course went to Ukraine and went to humanitarian aid in Gaza. I do support that kind of need to defend oneself, but also to support the humanitarian aid. But I did also support when President Biden put a halt on another shipment of 1,800 dumb bombs. You don't need dumb bombs to take out Hamas terrorists. When you drop 2,000-pound dumb bombs over and over and over on apartment buildings or on refugee camps, where they've been taking for a fourth or a fifth or a sixth time to try to seek safety, that is not the prosecution of a just war. That is just killing innocent lives. I don't think we can comprehend what it is like in Gaza. And this also applies to the West Bank and the violence that is there. What is going on there, I've had the chance to meet with UNRWA workers who are doing God's work, trying to get food, water, medicine to people of Gaza. You've seen what they've said in terms of humanitarian aid and food getting into the north of Gaza. People there are on the brink, if not involved in famine. So Israel has a responsibility to protect itself, but it also has a responsibility to conduct a just war and make sure you don't starve or just kill innocent life indiscriminately. That's the place where I am. And I will tell you that I spoke to Mr. Netanyahu on November the 11th, just 5 weeks into it. And he said to me, we were at a small meeting, a foreign affairs meeting, bipartisan. We had Republicans, Democrats, Republican senators were with us. And it was raw, 5 weeks in. And they said, we're going to show you this footage, about 40 minutes worth of footage that was, as I said, I felt a duty to watch it, to know what had happened because of my job, but I'll never forget it. And so Mr. Netanyahu said, we do have a superior military, and we do have superior intelligence. So we do have some ability to micro-target, even in a place as difficult as Gaza, even with this absurd set of underground tunnels built by Hamas, starving the people of Gaza from those resources. So I said to Mr. Netanyahu and his defense minister, Mr. Gallant, please use your ability to micro-target whenever you possibly can, so that innocent lives will not be lost. I'm very worried about the war in Israel. I talked to the State Department today. They have some hope, Antony Blinken and others, they have some hope with the killing of Sinwar, that there is a new opening for a ceasefire. They are now dealing with a council. I think it's a 5-person council who has replaced Sinwar. And so there is some hope for renewed negotiation around ceasefire and, importantly, return of the hostages. I'll end with this. There's one hostage family. The hostage name was Itay. He was an IDF officer who was taken. And not too long ago, maybe in February, the parents discovered the evidence showed that Itay was deceased, but in Gaza. And what his parents said, and he's a dual citizen, he's American, Israeli. His parents said to me, holding on to one of these dog tags, until he is brought home and we can sit Shiva, we can never be at peace. So that is my goal. Bring them all home, get to a two-state solution with a regional peacekeeping interim government, and then ultimately dignity and security for both Palestinians and Israel. Oh yeah, I will look for hands in just a moment. Is this about Israel? Oh, the question, I'm not certain exactly what it means, but maybe I have an indication. The question is, are we going to survive this?
All of this.
That's one way of putting it. I'm here, you know, on the legislative side of my life. I'm not here on the campaign side of my life. But I can't divorce myself from what is going on in the world. None of us can. And in fact, it's our duty, and I think the reason you're here tonight is you feel it too, a duty to participate civically, to make sure that we do survive this. And we not only just survive it, we begin to thrive again. That we talk to each other with decency and dignity. That we run on our ideas to bring community together, not divide us, demonize us, dehumanize us. So without being political, yes, we're going to survive this. We are going to survive it. We don't have any other option. You know the famous moment when Ben Franklin walks out from Independence Hall, and he is asked by a very famous woman, and I'm forgetting her name. Anybody remember her name? She was a powerhouse at the time. It's always told that a woman asked him, but she was a powerhouse of a woman, so I got to get her name. I'll get that for you next time. And she said, Mr. Franklin, what do we have? A monarchy or a republic? What do we have? And he said, a republic if you can keep it.
Yeah.
It is our responsibility now to keep it. And I'll say this because I take this professionally and personally. I was there on January the 6th. They're excited in a nerdy kind of way to be a part of the certification of the electoral count. I thought this was going to be really interesting, a moment in history. Now, it was COVID, you remember, so the Capitol was shut down. Even my staff, we agreed, everybody stay home because there might be some disturbance on the street. But I wanted to be there to bear witness and to fight back against the disinformation and lies that we have been suffering. And then, of course, all hell broke loose. And I was taken out, like many others, in a gas mask. They told us to get our gas masks out from under our seats. None of us knew there were gas masks. It was terrifying. It was horrifying. But what I learned in that moment, which I should have known all along as a grown woman, is that democracy is fragile. It is not a given. It is not a constant. It's not a steel structure. It is actually man-made and man-tended to. George Washington said, democracy is as a garden, that you must weed out the bad ideas and cultivate the good. We are at a moment, we are 1 week away from a moment where I believe there is so much more good in this country than bad or demonization. There's so much more good work to be done. There's so many more people of goodwill in this country that we're not going to fall for this darkness. We're going to make sure that light overcomes darkness, that truth and knowledge overcomes ignorance and lies, and that good overcomes evil. It's on us, and I am an optimist to answer the question, and maybe this isn't what you meant, are we going to survive this? You bet. We're going to do one more, and then we're going to get a microphone right over somewhere here. Hands, Mike, so you can get to them. Walt and Mike, you can find your hands here. Oh, this question is more local. Would your office, more on the ground, who in your office would be good to talk about zoning issues in Abington? Taco Bell, this is really local. Taco Bell is trying to put a restaurant at 1901 Old York Road, Speaks, I'm about to look to you, with 13 variances in a space too small. Here we go. Oh, Am I allowed to say who it is?
Yes, I know.
Hello, Elaine Treese, my classmate at Abington High School.
So you're gonna laugh because after the first two questions, I thought I have got to go find that young man and get my question back.
Can I have the microphone down here for Elaine? That is funny.
Well, so I apologize for
No,
taking
no,
up
don't
our time
apologize.
with such a local. Oh, you have told it. Okay. With such a local issue. After the first two questions, I thought this is.
Microphone's off. No, I think.
Put it closer, put it closer.
After the last two questions, I was embarrassed that I even selected or put that question in because it is so local and very small in comparison to what you've been already speaking about. But I represent a group of neighbors that is fighting to take a large corporation called Summerwood, who owns over 200 Taco Bells, and get them to not place that in an area that is significantly smaller than required by the zoning regulations. And really, I was just looking, because you're busy with your election, for maybe a name or two of someone from the Glenside office who has had some dealings with the zoning board and with the commissioners who could maybe give me some information. So I don't want to take up any more
No
time.
question is too small.
Oh, it is.
Elaine, that is a riot. And Elaine and I just ran into each other recently, and I hadn't seen her in years. But we were friends and had an awful lot of fun here, didn't we, Elaine?
Yes, we did.
I think we got into a little trouble too. I'm not trying to pass this off.
No, to pass
because,
off.
I was a state representative, I was township commissioner
Yeah.
for Ward 7. I was state representative for 6 years, and now serving at the federal level. So I'm not passing you off, Elaine. And our team would be happy to talk to you about that. But I do know that the best people to talk to are the Board of Commissioners. They will make. They will make these decisions. Spiegelman is terrific among them, and I'm happy to make sure we connect you more.
That's perfect, all I wanted. Thank
No
you so
question
much.
too local, no question too small. Thank you.
Meet me by the tasty cakes.
All right.
I think we have mics coming down. We have lots of hands up, lots of hands.
Okay. Hi, my name is Nancy Goldman. It's also a local question.
Good.
I'm president of Sutton Terrace Condominium in Bala Cynwyd. I'm also a member of a coalition that consists of 750 units, over 1,000 voters, including Sutton Terrace, 191, and some other major condominiums in the area. Congresswoman Dean, I'm sure you have heard that PennDOT wants to put a roundabout at Belmont Avenue and St. Asaph's Roads. They want to put a 2-lane roundabout. There are no 2-lane roundabouts in the entire state of Pennsylvania. It is the least safe roundabout, and that's what they want to put in our backyard, or in my case, it's my front yard. You received letters from Sutton Terrace about this, like your former friend, or your current friend.
Still my friend.
We need advice. So we have significant safety concerns about crossing a roundabout for pedestrians, about car traffic, about bicycles. It is just unimaginable to us. The reason we're talking to you is this is from PennDOT,
Right.
but they're using a federal grant.
Exactly.
So that's why we're coming to you. We would appreciate it after the election if we can talk and see what can happen.
I would love to have that conversation. And this is not to diminish the local question from the state and federal question, because they all matter. And we have to all be in this together. So I would really like the chance, that's our neighborhood now. I still miss my Glenside roots, but I'm not giving them up. But I would love the chance to talk to you. For the very reason I just talked about, the Regional Leadership Council, the Invest in America bills, we want to make sure they're investing for the future, for safer transit and travel, for pedestrians, for bicycles, for buses, for people who are driving, all the rest. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask somebody to come and take your contact. That's great. And we will set up a meeting with you and your constituents at your convenience. And we'll do it after 1 week from now.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Congressman Dean. My name is Michael Goldblatt.
Hi, Michael.
I appreciate that you have emphasized making a civil discourse and keeping a civil discourse throughout all these things that are happening in Israel, the Middle East, and the election and that. What I have an issue that I'd like you to speak to, and you spoke some about it. This is the Middle East issue. And what you said earlier was 45,000 Palestinians have been killed, and there's missing limbs and things like that. And that's horrible that so many people will be killed. But what the nuance of that was that a bunch of people were killed. Not that many of them, if not a majority, a large minority, were the combatants. And the combatants were hiding behind their children.
That's right.
Were hiding behind their civilians.
That is right.
And I'll ask you to speak to it. I'll give you my opinion, and I'll ask you to speak to it. It seems to me that this administration is more focused on trying to tamp down Israel's existential fight for its life than to let them go and root out these terrorists, Sinwar, the Hezbollah terrorist, which was also an American terrorist, which also was part of bombing the Marines back in the 80s. And it seems like the slant is too much for the Palestinians are suffering. Yes, they are, because the combatants are hiding behind them, and they've said outright that they want them, the civilians, to be killed, because that makes us, America, the West, say, oh, those poor civilians are killed. We have to hold Israel back from doing what it needs to do. So if you could, I didn't really ask a question, but that's my concern, and I hope you'll speak to that.
I appreciate your concern. I absolutely appreciate your concern. And I wish I weren't saying the number 43,000, 44,000. And I wish I had a clearer understanding of how many were Hamas. We don't have that information.
All propaganda from Hamas. There is no such thing as a health ministry. There's Hamas.
Okay, let me just try to speak to this set of questions, if you don't mind, because it involves what you're talking about. We know that that is the only reporting that we have, and it is fairly legitimate. What we don't know, to your point, is how many of them are part of Hamas. How many of them are terrorists? How many were involved in either the planning, the execution, planning for more? I wish we knew that. But we do know that an awful lot of civilians are being killed. I'm very, I can't say happy, but the world is better off that Sinwar has been killed. The world is better off. Thank God for that. Israel was able to find and take him out. The world is better off for that. That gives us an opening to... Sorry, let me finish making the comment on this, if you would. Thank you. And so, two things can be true at once. A love of Israel, and behind that love of that democracy is my vote for the supplemental aid, for the MOU. So your characterization that this administration or any of my work has harmed Israel's ability to defend itself is simply not so. I voted for the continuation of the Memorandum of Understanding, $3.3 billion in resources annually for Israel, for this very plight, their existential threat to their existence of another 500 million. So I quarrel with you when you say, looks like we're pulling away from Israel. We're not. I haven't. I want to end the loss of civilian life and the suffering. I wish you could speak to the American former military man who is running UNRWA Rafah and the suffering that is going on there. You're absolutely right. Children are put up in camps or in hospitals or in tents, and below them could be Hamas, or maybe even scattered within them. It's horrible. The whole thing is horrible. but I think I have an obligation to make sure that I'm part of peacemaking, being a part of peacemaking and an end to suffering of individuals, both Israelis, Palestinians, folks in the West Bank, aid workers. Hundreds of aid workers have lost their lives. Media and journalists, hundreds of them have lost their lives. So don't worry, I'm supportive of Israel. I'll continue, please God, to have the ability to go there, to that beautiful country. And I'll end with this thought on it. Something I didn't understand until I visited. I visited in November, as I said, 5 weeks in, but then again in, I think it was February. The people of Israel, as they explained it to me, and we visited the fields where the children were slaughtered. We visited the kibbutz. We visited kibbutz that were displaced into Tel Aviv. And two things struck me terribly. One was the discussion that you might think that we are moving on in our grief over this attack. We are not. And we cannot. They simply cannot. It would be wrong of us here in this far off place to think that Israel is able to now repair and get over it. You can't until justice is served and the hostages are home. So they can't. That was one thing. But then the other thing that really made me sad and made me fortified in my work is that a woman who was a mother in a kibbutz, just a marvelous woman, spoke to us and she said, I fear I'm losing my humanity as a result of what has happened to us. We mustn't let that happen in this world. We have to do everything we can to protect the humanity of those people living in Israel, but also respect the humanity of those people living in the West Bank and in Palestine.
Congresswoman Dean, hi. My name is Richard Kosich. I am from Conshohocken, I think like this guy here too. We are in Montgomery County. So I just want to thank you for putting on this event tonight. I really appreciate you talking to us. And I was actually at a couple of your prior events, prior town halls, I think the last time, if I'm not mistaken. But I do have a question for you. Myself and a lot of people like me in Conshohocken are just wondering why you haven't debated your Republican opponent in this election, Dave Winkler, who is a veteran and an African-American gentleman. We know that you debated your prior Republican opponents in your last two elections, Christian Nascimento and also Kathy Barnett. So what's different about this election? And I know it's late in the game, but do you think there's any chance of having a debate between now and next Tuesday?
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, and you have a council member here, Conshohocken council member here. Good to see you, and we love Conshohocken. And I thank you for the question. David Winkler, from what I have seen of his campaign, is running a campaign based on lies. Perhaps you've seen it. He's called me anti-Semitic. He's called me racist. He has lied about me. He has lied about my work. He has lied about my family. So why am I not debating him? Because I choose not to debate somebody whose campaign is based in lies. We've had enough of that.
I'm a retired physician, and I just wanted to know what Congress, I've been retired for 2 years.
What kind of physician?
Podiatrist. I was in Willow Grove for almost 40 years.
Wow. Thank you for your service to us.
Thank you. I wanted to know what Congress and you are doing to help the medical field and how you're promoting the medical field. I feel that there's just not enough doctors and nurses being promoted into the medical field. And the other thing that I have, since I've been retired, is insurance companies are still coming after me for medical records that I don't have. Since I retired, I sold my practice to another physician. I don't have control over those medical records. But then they're now putting me into payment, they paid me for the medical services. Now they're putting me into collection to have me pay it back.
Oh my heavens.
So I don't understand, how is it this possible to perform the services, and now they're asking for this?
To your second part of your question, I don't know the answer, but I would like us, if you don't mind, team, take contact and see if we can help unravel that. Mike is right there, my district director. Thank you, doctor, for your service of 40 years to Willow Grove and this greater community. So that part I don't know. We'll see if we can try to untangle that web and get you out of that kind of nightmare. But think about that. We all struggle with that. People chasing you for a copay that you believe you actually paid. People chasing you for a bill that you actually thought was covered. Those kinds of issues. So expansion of the Affordable Care Act, simplification of the Affordable Care Act, and resources to train more doctors, particularly doctors in underserved areas. We need to make sure that we are encouraging young people who wish to be a part of that kind of life-saving service, that we make sure that we encourage young people with the help through tuition. We now know, I mean, we all have young people, you know, my kids' age, who have, some have gone to medical school, and the tuition that they are saddled with, will they ever be able to dig out of it? So government can do more to incentivize young people to go into this, to get the education, and then serve underserved communities and get loan forgiveness as a result of it. Something else that I have introduced, and I hope I can get across the finish line, is the SAVE Act. And it is, sadly, we've seen an increase in, Doc, I don't know if this happened at the end of your career, but an increase in attacks on healthcare workers, particularly in hospitals, which I find so strange and ironic following COVID. Remember how we stood outside of Abington Jefferson Hospital on the shift chains, and we would applaud those heroes who were going in and coming out, trying to save lives as they risked their own? After that, we have seen, and we've seen a dramatic increase in attacks on healthcare workers, doctors, staff, nurses, administrators. So I've introduced the SAVE Act, which is actually mirrored after the act that we passed to protect folks on airlines. We saw an increase in attacks and made it a crime, a federal crime, to attack somebody on an airline. We're trying to do the exact same thing. I have Dr. Bouchon, who's a Republican, who is the co-lead on this. So between tuition incentives and protection for healthcare workers, there's lots government can do. Don't miss the edges. If anybody on the edges here wants a question.
Two questions. My second's about Israel, but my first is the future of our nation. And I'm 70 years old, and I have Social Security. My wife has Social Security. My wife has a pension. I'm secure, but I really worry in the future when, you know, pensions are rare in our country, that Social Security might not be there for younger generations. And I'm wondering, will there be a time when both major parties will be able to sit down and say, let's agree to both be honest to the American people and both take the political hit we might get for it and say, this is what we need to do to ensure Social Security for the future. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of very poor elderly in the future. My question and comment about Israel is, if you want somebody like me, an American patriot who loves America, loves Israel, and believes our national security is tied into each other, then when you come to a community event and speak to us and throw out the figure of 45,000 without mentioning an analysis of what your opinion is of combatants, terrorists killed versus civilians who have died, and compare it to maybe fights that we had in Mosul and others, I really believe, irresponsible. John Spencer, my last comment is, who's a war expert at West Point, has spoken about what Israel has done by making phone calls to civilians, putting out flyers, telling people to move. They've done the greatest job in modern warfare of limiting civilians when terrorists who are in a battle against a country like Israel is occurring. And I don't think you give Israel credit for that. So that I'm disappointed about.
And what is your name? I appreciate that. What was your name?
Don Sable of Elkins Park.
Don?
S-A-B-L-E.
Thank you, Don.
Sure.
I appreciate that. And to your first question, Social Security. You're right. There are too many people now growing up and working and not going to enjoy the pension that you talked about, and worried about their Social Security. I have supported, it's called Act 2100, like the 21st century, 2100. John Larson is the one who authored it and has introduced it time after time for the protection and the growth of Social Security. You're right, we need two parties who actually want to face this problem and make sure that we do the right thing about it. What I hope is this election will give us two parties clearer-eyed in order to protect Social Security and Medicare. We have one party, or the remnant of a party, that would like to do away with Social Security, would like to do away with Medicare, would like to cut it. And by the way, you all know this. You paid into it. It's not some sort of a freebie entitlement. You've paid into it. We've all paid into it. And so I'm doing everything in my power to make sure it is there, not just for me as I age, I'm 65, but as those younger than we are. Number one, of course, those who are aging into it, make sure that they are constantly protected, that they get cost of living increases, those kinds of things. But we want to make sure we steer away from politicians who say they'd like to privatize it or do away with it. I'll make sure we don't have that happen. On your point on Israel, Hamas, Gaza, West Bank, I take it, and I will take it to my heart, that you were offended that I mentioned the number 45,000. I take it to my heart. As I said, I wish I could tell you. And I think Israel knows. They're so sophisticated in what they know. I think they know the percentage of combatant to innocent life. We need that disclosure. We need that transparency. Someday that will come, but they're in the midst of this right now. But I do think I have an obligation to speak up when innocent lives are lost at this level. And when part of the loss of life has to do with conditions on the ground. Early on, the conditions on the ground in terms of pollution, the inability to move waste properly, was causing death, illness. A constituent of mine, his 83-year-old mother in a wheelchair was being moved from northern Gaza early on and got, what is the name of that horrible disease? Cholera, yeah, she got cholera. The conditions on the ground, the inability to get clean water, to dispose of waste, to get clean food. In northern Gaza, they are having trouble getting any kind of food in. So I have an obligation to speak to these things. As horrible as Hamas is, and what they have done for decades to starve the Palestinian people of their rights, of their dignity, of their futures, of their children's futures. I feel a responsibility to speak to both. And I did begin by saying, we watched October the 7th, 1,200 plus Israelis slaughtered, burned. The videos that we saw, children watching their father being assassinated, frankly, in a safe house in the backyard, and the children running around their kitchen saying, why am I alive? The horror is unbearable. And as a federal representative, I have a responsibility to recognize both sides of the horror, and much more importantly, to get toward the peace.
This is a very strange time we're living in. What is the current administration doing to hopefully subvert any violence that's going to happen next Tuesday?
I wouldn't have thought a few years back you'd even have to think of that. I wouldn't have. I really wouldn't have. What I think the current administration, well, some things that I know are happening in a very granular way, is heightened security. For example, we know that when we go to certify the election next time around, the equivalent January 6th, when we do it again, the Capitol will be fortified as though it is a very strategically high-level danger event, like it was not January 6th of 2021. So the Capitol will be fortified. Sadly, though, the rhetoric that we are hearing, just last night, people should be slaughtered. The violent rhetoric that some are willing to use, we have to reject it. That's what I hope this election is about. Rejecting, weed out these bad ideas, this dangerous rhetoric, that we think we have the right to attack anybody. I worry about, and they've literally done, sadly, sort of table games. Election boards have done table games to figure out what kind of violence could fall on a voting booth or an election polling place. They've talked to me about the different things they have really tried to analyze and work on and be as protected as possible. The election workers and those who come to cast their vote, their American right. So I know there's heightened security everywhere. Local municipalities are paying attention. Election boards are paying attention. There are teams of lawyers being deployed across this Commonwealth. You noticed, I don't know if you've noticed, we are the one to watch this election cycle. I wonder if we will like it when we are not the one to watch. It might be nice to not be the center of attention. But I do know, I've talked literally with our Secretary of State. I think he was a brilliant pick by Josh Shapiro. It's Secretary Al Schmidt, the Republican commissioner from Philadelphia during 2020. I've talked to him multiple times, and they are working diligently to do everything to protect this free and fair election, which is what it will be, and also protect us as we go cast our vote. Security will be heightened, but I do believe we're going to get this done, and I think the decency of all of us will protect us against that violence. We have a question down here. They're coming.
I'm going along with the voting saying I work elections, I work tabulations. I want to send a message out to everybody. If for any reason you or anyone you know is concerned that their mailed-in ballot did not get received or noted, show up anywhere in Montgomery County at any polling place you feel safe. Ask for a provisional ballot and you will get entered, okay? Green provisional ballot, worst case scenario. It will say.
And I do want to compliment Pennsylvania. We've come a long way in the simplification or the ease of ability to access the ballot. You remember not so very long ago where it was you had to have an excuse for a mail-in or absentee ballot. You had to be sick, disabled, out of the country, something. Thank God we have gotten past that. And I hope everybody took advantage, if it works in your life, for a mail-in ballot. And you see how easily and I think efficiently they're being tracked. I dropped mine in one of the local boxes, and within 24 to 48 hours, I had noticed my ballot was received. And I say that again, nonpartisan. Whether your ballot is striking for Republicans or striking for Democrats or not talking to any of us, we have a good system. Montgomery County has worked very, very hard at it. And take advantage of the drop boxes. They are very secure, and they're going immediately to Montgomery County. So thank you for those questions, and thank you for the idea. If you got a question, if you have a problem, you think you didn't get to vote, you can do a provisional ballot.
Hi, good evening. It's been a while. Last time I saw you were in Collegeville.
That's right. Good to see you again.
Yep. It was a very interesting summer. I emailed Bill a lot of what happened. It's a long story. I feel like this country has forgotten in many ways that Ukraine is still fighting for its existence.
Thank you.
I know they received some F-16s, about time. I know they're still holding that part of Russia that they took earlier in the summer. But is the administration going to give them more lethal aid that they need to not just defend themselves, but actually retake the territory that shouldn't have been taken from them in the first place?
Thank you for the question. And the focus, we focus on, we've talked about protecting our own democracy. We talked about protecting Israel's democracy. We have to also make sure that we protect Ukraine's democracy. That's why I wear this pin. This was given to me, it's a shaft of wheat with the colors of Ukraine. It was given to me by some Ukrainian Americans who live right here in my district. This district, you probably know, has a high number of Ukrainian Americans, and we also have some refugee Ukrainians here. I have said from the start, February, how many years ago now, February 24th, that the United States and the world must give, but the United States shares a huge part of the burden, the responsibility to protect this and help this democracy, that we must give Ukraine everything it needs to win. I always regretted that we heard a lot, we must give Ukraine everything it needs. You have to finish the statement. Everything it needs to win. And the United States has done terrific work in getting materiel to Ukraine. Something I was really regretful around was, you remember, we supported them immediately with millions and millions and millions of dollars in materiel. Some of it slower than I liked, I will admit to you, and argue. I argued with the administration, get it to them faster. What do they need? Do they need tanks? Whatever it was. And then you saw that the president asked for, in October of last year, I'm forgetting what the numbers were.
45.
What we wound up passing, and it took us 6 months, was $60 billion more aid. But it took us 6 months because of politics, not because we didn't have the ability to help. And remember, by supporting Ukraine, we are literally supporting ourselves. We're supporting our own national security. We're supporting other NATO nations who are surrounding Ukraine. I think the United States has played an extraordinary, indispensable role, and we must continue that and do more, to your point. Do more. Give them what they need to succeed. It took us 6 months to pass that supplemental. February 24th is when we passed it. That day, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, we got on a plane, and it was a trip that had been put off for foreign affairs, and we flew that day to Poland, and then another hop in Poland, and we met with the 82nd Airborne there. I have to tell you, the heroes on the ground doing the work. The base that we went to, 82nd Airborne Base in Poland, which is right at the border of Ukraine, they are moving 95% of the material in through those logistics right there. The men and women at that base just struck awe in me. And after they showed us their work, their tireless work, complicated work, moving the material that we provided as well as other NATO nations, I asked them sort of just casually, I said, what brings you here? This is a dangerous spot for you and it's exhausting work. And many of them raised their hand and said, I wanted to be able, I asked for this assignment. I wanted to be able to say to my kids and my grandkids that I was here and tried to help Ukraine save its country, save its democracy. They were proud to do the work. And then we took a 10-hour train ride in to Kyiv and met with President Zelensky. The thanks that he expressed and his generals expressed and his soldiers expressed, the look in the soldiers' eyes in particular was of near desperation and appreciation like you can't believe. The ability to lean and rely upon this great democracy to protect that young democracy. So I'll keep fighting for more aid to Ukraine to do everything it can that they win.
All right, guys.
Congresswoman Dean Match was seeing you not long ago. Thank you for your service.
Hi, Matt.
An add-on to a previous question about the sanctity of the upcoming election. The election has been going on already.
Yes.
And the news today was that drop boxes in Oregon and Washington were on fire, where there were ballots cast. So there was already election tampering going on. There has been some reporting, early reporting, about the efforts on the parts of the known usual suspects to continue to tamper with this election and to suggest that if there is no win, then it is obviously evidence of election interference on the part of Democrats. Now, this is sort of a nonpartisan question because I want to know what federal response can be exerted right now to protect this entire process and to somehow punish and expunge this incredible effort on the parts of people who speak untruth, this lying. There seems to be an impenetrability of this lying and false barrenness of what's going on in the world and get away with it. It's an alternate reality. I think George Orwell is rolling over in his grave.
Yeah.
He underestimated the capacity for there to be such a freaking alternate reality. What can be done at the federal level to quash this insanity?
Matt, great question. And you raised two different types of tampering. One is literally violent. As I was walking out the house, I saw something where some incendiary device was put into a drop box and burned one portion of a ballot. And thankfully, I hope, if the system is sophisticated enough, they can go fix that ballot. They can get to that voter and say, recast your ballot. We'll spoil this one as it was spoiled. That's interference by violence, by literally trying to burn somebody's ballot, blow up the box. But the other one is much more insidious. And we have been watching it and hearing it for 6+ years. As a member of Congress, I remember Bill Barr serving in the Trump administration in the summer before the election, saying things like, it's gonna be rigged, it's gonna be fixed, lying about an election that had not taken place. What I think is so insidious is people in power, people in elected office that you're supposed to be able to look up to, lying to us, disinformation. Speaker Johnson, what he is saying that is literally laced with lies, that's what we have to call out. That's what I really almost recognize now, that my job is to just try to push back on the lies and disinformation, because we have seen how dangerous it is. It was so dangerous that people felt they needed to go to the Capitol with flags, the American flag, and their candidate's flag, and beat Capitol police officers and hope to kill Mike Pence, Nancy Pelosi, any one of us. The most insidious things is people in responsible places, whether it's media, elected office, our institutions, lying to us to tear down our faith in institutions in order to get control or to remain in power. What can be done? Vote. Vote them out. Whoever's lying to us needs to be voted out of office. Put an end to it. That's what democracy is all about. Because the risk on the other side, historically, we have seen. Sadly, we have seen. So vote. Everybody vote. Everybody get your friends out and vote for people who tell you the truth. I think that might have been my last question. Can I just say a thank you? Is that my friend back there? See somebody standing, waving your hand. I think we called an end to the questions, but if you want to come on up and ask, come on up. Let me just do this because I'm mindful of everybody's, we've gone over. I am mindful of everybody's time. Let me just simply say to you, thank you, Abington School District, for letting me back on this stage after I flubbed it in 1970. And thank you, all of you, for spending time with me tonight. I take to heart that which you have said, that which you worry about. I worry about it too. Let's move forward
as much as we possibly can to try to solve problems, not tear us down. Thanks so much.